The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the empty space between three ancient star systems, a monument to cooperation and diplomacy that had stood for 10,000 years. Inside its walls, every known species had found their voice. Every conflict had found its resolution. Every problem had found its solution through careful words and patient negotiation. Until the humans arrived. Ambassador Dawn stood at the entrance of the Great Hall. His simple black suit a stark contrast to the flowing robes and glittering armor worn by the alien delegates around him. He was not a tall man, nor particularly impressive in any physical way. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face showed the lines of someone who had spent many years thinking deeply about difficult problems. But his eyes were sharp, and when he looked at something, he truly saw it. The hall stretched before him like a canyon made of light. Thousands of seats rose in tiers on every side, filled with beings of every shape and color imaginable. Some had scales that shimmered like oil on water. Others had fur as white as snow or skin as dark as the void between stars. Some floated in tanks of strange liquids, while others perched on branches that grew from the walls themselves. The air was filled with the sound of 100 different languages, all being translated simultaneously by the ancient machines built into the walls. At the center of the hall stood the speaking platform, a circular stage made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. It was here that all species came to make their case, to argue their position, to negotiate their place in the galaxy. It was here that wars had been prevented and alliances had been formed. It was here that Dohan now walked, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence that fell over the assembly. Hi, Councilor Mavex watched the human approach with 4 of his 7 eyes. He was a Velthari, one of the oldest species in the known galaxy. His body was long and serpentine, covered in scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, they were a deep purple, the color of curiosity mixed with caution. He had read the reports about humans, of course. Everyone had. They had appeared from the outer reaches of the galaxy just 50 years ago, emerging from a region of space that all other species had deemed too dangerous to explore. They called their home planet Earth, a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. By all measures, they should have been a minor species, worthy of perhaps a single seat in the outer rings of the council chamber, but the reports said otherwise. The reports spoke of ships that moved faster than should be possible. They spoke of weapons that could crack moons in half. They spoke of soldiers who fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness, yet surrendered with grace when the battle was lost. Most troubling of all, the reports spoke of a species that did not seem to care about the rules that everyone else followed. Du Hun reached the zone speaking platform and stepped onto its glowing surface. The crystal beneath his feet pulsed brighter for a moment, acknowledging his presence and broadcasting his image to every screen in the chamber. "I am Dawn," he said simply. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I speak for Earth and all human territories." Mivix leaned forward in his seat at the highest tier of the chamber. "Ambassador Dawn, you stand before the Galactic Council. For 10,000 years, this body has maintained peace among the stars. Every species that wishes to be part of our civilization must accept certain responsibilities and follow certain rules. Do you understand this?" Dawn nodded slowly. "I understand that this is what you believe." A murmur ran through the assembly. That was not the expected response. New species always began with respect, with humble acknowledgement of the Council's authority. They asked for guidance. They sought approval. They did not make statements that could be interpreted as disagreement. Councilor Thren of the Karathi rose from his seat. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and a head that resembled a hammer. His species had been warriors once, before the Council had civilized them. Now they were merchants and traders, but they had never lost their aggressive nature. "Human," Friend said, his voice like stones grinding together. "Your species is young. You do not understand how things work in this galaxy. When new species join the Council, they must pay tribute. They must cede certain territories to established powers. They must accept their place in the order of things. This is not negotiable." Dahan tilted his head slightly, as if considering the words. "And what tribute do you demand?" Thren's forearms spread wide in what might have been a smile. "Your species has colonized 37 worlds in the past 50 years. The Karathi claim 12 of those worlds as part of our historical territory. You will surrender them immediately, along with all resources you had extracted from them." "I see," Dahan said. Mavex's scales shifted to a lighter shade of purple. He sensed something in the human's tone that he did not like. "Ambassador, the Council recognizes the Karathi claim. You are also required to provide the Velthri Collective with access to your faster-than-light technology. Our scientists believe your drive systems are more advanced than anything currently in use. Sharing this technology is the price of your membership in galactic civilization." Dahan looked around the chamber slowly, taking in the thousands of watching eyes. Some looked at him with pity, expecting him to crumble under the weight of these demands. Others looked at him with hunger, already calculating how they might benefit from human weakness. A few looked at him with something approaching curiosity, wondering how this small, quiet man would respond. "Is there anything else?" Dahan asked. The chamber buzzed with surprise. He should have been protesting by now. He should have been negotiating, offering counter-proposals, seeking allies among the other species. That was how the game was played. That was how it had always been played. A delegate from the Marathi Syndicate stood. Their species were known for their cunning and their love of complex deals. The Syndicate requires access to human medical technology. "We have observed that your species ages much more slowly than most, yet you claim no genetic modification. We wish to study this. Your military forces must be limited," called another delegate, this one from the Hollow Federation. "No species is permitted to maintain a fleet larger than their population requires for defense. We estimate your current forces exceed this limit by a factor of 10. Your expansion must halt immediately," demanded yet another voice. "The territories you are moving toward have been reserved for future colonization by the elder races." Dahan stood in silence as the demands piled up around him. Each species seemed to have something they wanted from humanity. Each one assumed that this was simply how things were done, that the humans would accept some demands and negotiate others, that eventually a compromise would be reached and humanity would take its place as another small species under the protection and control of the Council. When the chamber finally fell silent, Dahan spoke. "I have listened to your demands," he said. "I have heard what you want from humanity. Now I will give you our response." Mavex's scales turned a deep, satisfied gold. This was the moment when the humans would begin to bargain. This was when the real negotiations would start. He had done this many times before with many species. They always resisted at first, but eventually they all accepted the reality of their situation. The Council was simply too powerful to defy. Dahan looked up at the High Counselor, and for a moment something passed across his face. It might have been amusement. It might have been pity. "We decline," he said. The word hung in the air like a stone dropped into still water. For a long moment, no one spoke. No one moved. The translators hummed quietly, rendering the word into 100 different languages, but its meaning remained the same in all of them. Decline. "I do not understand," Mavex said slowly. His scales had shifted to a confused gray. "What do you decline?" "All of it," Dahan said. "Every demand, every condition, every tribute and every concession. We decline to negotiate any of it. Thren rose to his full height, his forearms clenched into fists. You cannot decline. This is how things are done. Every species negotiates their entry into galactic civilization. Every species accepts some terms. You cannot simply refuse. Dohan turned to face the Karathi counselor. And yet, that is exactly what I am doing. Humanity will not surrender any of our colonies. We will not share our technology. We will not limit our military. We will not halt our expansion. We will not pay tribute or accept any conditions placed upon our sovereignty. This is madness. Someone shouted from the upper tiers. They will be destroyed. The council will crush them. Do you not understand what you are doing? Mivex demanded, his voice rising with something that sounded almost like fear. If you refuse to negotiate, we cannot protect you. The elder races will see you as a threat. They will act against you. Dawn smiled then, and it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had already calculated every possible outcome and found them all acceptable. Let them come, he said, and then, without another word, Ambassador Dohan turned and walked off the speaking platform. His footsteps echoed in the stunned silence as he made his way toward the exit. Passing between rows of delegates who stared at him with disbelief, with anger, with fear, he did not look back. The chamber erupted. 1,000 voices rose at dawn. She returned to her chair and looked at the latest batch of messages. More threats, more warnings, more offers. All of them assuming that humanity could be brought into the system, that everyone eventually joined the council, that there was no other way to exist in. She returned to her chair and looked at the latest batch of messages. More threats, more warnings, more offers. All of them assuming that humanity could be brought into the system, that everyone eventually joined the council, that there was no other way to exist. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Dohan walked out of the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one had expected. Admiral Ga stood on the observation deck of her flagship, the Hala, and watched as another human colony ship jumped to faster than light speed. It was the 47th ship to leave this sector today. Each one carried 10,000 colonists to worlds that the Council had never mapped, never claimed, never even known existed. She was tall for a human woman, with gray streaks in her dark hair that she refused to hide. Her uniform was simple and practical, designed for function rather than appearance. But there was something in the way she stood, in the way she watched those ships disappear into the light, that made everyone around her feel like they were in the presence of something greater than themselves. "Admiral," said her aide, a young man named Hambin, "we have received the latest intelligence reports from Council Space." Ga did not turn from the window. "Summarize them." Hambin looked down at his tablet, scrolling through pages of data. "The Council has held 17 emergency sessions in the past month. They cannot agree on how to respond to our expansion. The Velthari want to send a diplomatic delegation. The Karathi want to send a war fleet. The Marathi want to pretend we do not exist and hope we go away. And what have they actually done?" "Nothing," Hambin admitted. "They've done nothing? They cannot agree on a course of action, so they take no action at all." Ga smiled slightly. It was exactly as they had predicted. The Council's greatest strength was also its greatest weakness. By requiring every major species to agree before taking action, they had created a system that could not respond quickly to anything unexpected. And humanity was very, very unexpected. "What about our expansion numbers?" She asked. Hambin switched to a different screen. "In the 6 months since Ambassador Dahan's statement, we have established 112 new colonies. We have mapped 347 new star systems. We have discovered 17 habitable worlds that the Council's records said did not exist. Our total controlled territory has increased by 300%. He paused, as if he could not quite believe what he was reading. Admiral, at this rate, we will control more space than the Valkyrie Collective within 2 years. Within 5 years, we will be larger than the entire Council combined. GA nodded slowly. This was the plan. This had always been the plan, ever since humanity first realized what the Council really was. The Council thinks we are preparing for war, she said. They've been watching our military production, our weapons development, our fleet movements. They think we are building an army to attack them, are we not? Hambin asked carefully. GA finally turned from the window to face her aide. Tell me, Hambin, why would we attack them? What do they have that we want? He thought about it. Resources? Technology? Territory? We are finding our own resources in unclaimed space. Our technology is already better than theirs. And there is more empty territory in this galaxy than any species could fill in 1,000,000 years. She shook her head. No, we are not building a military to attack the Council. We are building a military to ensure that they cannot attack us while we do what we actually came here to do. And what is that? Grow, Jihei said simply. Expand, build, become so large and so powerful that by the time the Council finally decides to act, it will be too late to stop us. She walked across the observation deck to a large screen showing a map of the known galaxy. The Council's territory was marked in blue, a vast collection of star systems in the central regions of the galactic disk. Human territory was marked in red, a much smaller but rapidly growing area on the outer edge. But it was the white areas that drew Jihei's attention. The unexplored regions. The places no Council ship had ever visited. The territories that the elder races had declared off limits for reasons they refused to explain. Do you know why the Council forbids expansion into these regions? She asked, pointing to a massive white zone on the map. Hambin shook his head. The official reason is that the space is too dangerous. Anomalies, radiation, hostile phenomena. That is what they tell everyone, GA agreed. But our scouts have been exploring these regions for the past 2 years. Do you know what they found? I have not seen those reports. GA smiled. They found nothing dangerous at all. They found empty space, rich in resources, filled with habitable worlds. They found everything a growing civilization could ever need. The Council did not forbid expansion into these regions because they were dangerous. They forbade it because they did not want anyone else to have access to these resources. She traced her finger along the map, showing the path of human expansion. For 10,000 years, the Council has hoarded the best parts of the galaxy for themselves. They created rules that kept younger species small and dependent. They built a system where everyone had to negotiate for scraps while the elder races kept the feast for themselves. And we are simply taking what they were keeping from everyone, Hambin said slowly, understanding dawning on his face. We are not taking anything, GA corrected. We are building our own, on worlds they never claimed, in space they never explored, using resources they never touched. They cannot say we are stealing from them because everything we have, we found and built ourselves. The door to the observation deck opened, and a communications officer hurried in. Her face was pale with excitement. Admiral, we have received a report from Scout Fleet 7. They have made a discovery in Sector Gamma 9. Geo took the tablet the officer offered and read the report. As she read, her expression shifted from curiosity to something that looked almost like satisfaction. What is it? Hambin asked. GA handed him the tablet. Scout Fleet 7 has discovered a network of ancient jump gates. Hundreds of them. Possibly thousands. They appear to be millions of years old, built by a species that no longer exists. And they still work. Hambin stared at the report. Jump gates? Like the ones the Velthari use? Better than the ones the Velthari use. These gates can reach any point in the galaxy instantly. No travel time at all. And the Council never knew they existed because they never bothered to explore the regions where we found them. The implications were staggering. With access to these gates, humanity could expand even faster. They could reach territories that would take the Council centuries to access. They could build a network of colonies connected by instant travel while the rest of the galaxy crawled along at the speed of light. Should we share this discovery with the Council? Hambin asked. Jihei laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, but it was not a kind one either. Why would we do that? They never shared anything with us. They demanded tribute. They demanded our technology. They demanded that we give them everything we had worked for. And what did they offer in return? The privilege of following their rules. She walked back to the window, watching as more colony ships launched into the void. No, we will not share this with them. We will not negotiate access. We will not trade anything. We will simply use these gates to grow even faster. And by the time the Council realizes what has happened, it will be far too late. In the months that followed, the intelligence reports coming out of Council space grew increasingly panicked. The alien delegates had finally realized that humanity was not preparing for war. That would have been something they understood. That would have been something they knew how to respond to. Instead, the humans were simply ignoring them, building around them, expanding past them, creating a civilization that did not need the Council for anything at all. The Karathi sent their finest war fleet to the edge of human space, demanding that the expansion halt. Admiral Jie did not respond to their demands. She did not send ships to meet them. She did not acknowledge their presence at all. The Karathi fleet sat at the border for 3 months, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. Human colony ships continued to fly past them to distant territories. Human cargo ships continued to carry resources from new mining operations. Human science vessels continued to explore regions the Council had never seen. Eventually, the Karathi fleet went home. They could not maintain a presence so far from their supply lines indefinitely. And attacking humanity without Council authorization would have broken every treaty they had signed. The Velthari tried a different approach. They sent their most skilled diplomats to human border stations, hoping to engage in unofficial talks. But every station they approached simply declined to receive them. The diplomats sent messages explaining their peaceful intentions. The messages went unanswered. They offered gifts and concessions. The gifts were politely returned without comment. One diplomat, a young Velthari named Selim, spent 4 months waiting at a human border station, hoping someone would speak with her. She watched thousands of human ships come and go, each one ignoring her completely. She tried to understand what she was seeing, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this. She was used to dealing with species that wanted something. Every negotiation she had ever conducted was based on the assumption. 2 years had passed since the day Ambassador Dohan walked out of the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had learned the meaning of desperation. Envoy Sunho sat in the reception hall of Station Namsen, watching the latest delegation from the Velthari Collective shuffle through the entrance. There were 12 of them this time, all wearing the elaborate ceremonial robes that their species reserve for the most important occasions. Their scales shimmered with the deep gold color of humility, a shade that Sunho had been told no Velthari had displayed in living memory. He was a middle-aged man with a round face and gentle eyes that made visitors feel comfortable almost immediately. His job was to receive these delegations, to listen to their offers, and to politely decline them all. He had been doing this job for 80 months now, and he had become very good at it. "Welcome to Station Namsen," he said, rising from his seat and offering a slight bow. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. Tea?" The lead Velthari, An ancient creature whose scales had faded to a pale silver with age, accepted the tea with trembling hands. His name was Kavix, and he had once been one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He had negotiated treaties that had ended wars. He had brokered deals that had shaped the destinies of entire species. He had been the voice of the Velthari Collective for 300 years. Now he was here, in a small room on a human station, hoping that someone would listen to him. "Thank you for receiving us," Kavix said. His voice was soft and careful, nothing like the commanding tone that had once made planets tremble. "We have come to offer, to ask, to discuss possibilities." Sunho sat back down and sipped his own tea. "Please, speak freely. I am listening." Kavix looked at the other members of his delegation, as if seeking courage from their presence. Then he turned back to Sunho and began to speak. "The Velthari Collective has reconsidered its position regarding humanity. We acknowledge that our initial approach was misguided. We demanded tribute when we should have offered friendship. We threatened when we should have welcomed. We tried to impose our rules when we should have learned yours." He paused, his scales shifting to an even deeper shade of gold. "We are here to apologize, and to offer alliance." Sunho nodded slowly, showing no surprise. He had heard similar speeches from dozens of delegations over the past year. The Karathi had come with offers of military partnership. The Mirathi had come with offers of trade. The Hollow Federation had come with offers of technology sharing. Each time, the offers had grown more generous. Each time, humanity had politely declined. "What specifically are you offering?" Sunho asked. Kavix straightened slightly, a hint of his old authority returning. "Full alliance between the Velthari Collective and humanity. Equal status in all matters. No tribute, no concessions, no demands of any kind. We will share our technology freely. We will open our territories to human exploration. We will support human interests in the Council and oppose any action against your species." It was, Sunho knew, an extraordinary offer. 100 years ago, the Velthari would have laughed at the idea of treating any species as equals. 50 years ago, they would have demanded that any potential ally prove their worth through centuries of service. Now they were offering everything, asking for nothing in return except friendship. "May I ask why?" Sunho said. "Why is the Velthari Collective suddenly so interested in humanity?" Kavix's scales flickered with something that might have been embarrassment. "You know why. Everyone knows why. In 2 years, humanity has grown larger than species that took millennia to reach their current size. Your ships are everywhere. Your colonies are flourishing. Your technology advances faster than our scientists can track." He leaned forward, his old eyes fixed on Sunho's face. "But more than that, other species are watching. They see that humanity refused to play by the Council's rules, and humanity has thrived. They are beginning to wonder why they should continue to follow those rules themselves. The Hollow Federation has already reduced its tribute payments by half. The Mirathi have begun exploring regions that were forbidden to them. Even the Karathi are starting to ask questions that no one asked before." Sunho understood. The Council's power had never been based on military might alone. It was based on the belief that the Council's way was the only way, that everyone must negotiate and compromise and accept their place in the system. Humanity had shattered that belief simply by refusing to participate. And now, like a building with a cracked foundation, the whole structure was beginning to shake. "You want us to join the Council," Sunho said. "Not as subordinates this time, but as partners. You think that if humanity becomes part of the system will stabilize again." Kavix nodded eagerly. "Yes, exactly. With humanity inside the Council, as full and equal members, everyone will see that the system works. Everyone will see that negotiation and compromise can still produce good outcomes." The old order will be preserved, and everyone will benefit. Sunho was quiet for a long moment. He finished his tea and set the cup down carefully on the table between them. Then he looked at Kavix with an expression that was not unkind, but was also not encouraging. "I appreciate your honesty," he said, "and I understand your position. But I must ask you something. Why should we help you preserve a system that was designed to keep species like us small?" Kavix's scales shifted to a confused gray. "I do not understand. For 10,000 years, Sunho said, the Council has told every new species the same thing. Follow the rules. Pay tribute. Share your technology. Accept your place. And for 10,000 years, every new species has obeyed, because they believed they had no choice. They believed the Council was too powerful to defy." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the vast expanse of space beyond the station. Human ships moved through the void in every direction, carrying colonists and cargo, and hoped to places that the Council had never imagined. "But we showed them that they do have a choice," Sunho continued. "We showed them that a species can refuse to play by the Council's rules and still thrive. We showed them that the Council's power is based on belief, not reality. And now you want us to help you restore that belief?" Kavix rose from his seat, his ancient body trembling with something between desperation and anger. "You do not understand what you are doing. If the Council falls, there will be chaos. Species will fight over resources. Old grudges will resurface. Wars that we spent millennia preventing will break out across the galaxy. Perhaps," Sunho acknowledged, "or perhaps something better will emerge. Perhaps species will learn to stand on their own, to build their own futures, to deal with each other as equals rather than as masters and servants. Perhaps the chaos you fear is actually the birth pains of a freer galaxy." He turned back to face the Velthari delegation. "I am sorry, but humanity will not join your council. We will not help you preserve a system that we believe is unjust. We will continue to build our own civilization on our own terms, and we will welcome anyone who wishes to join us." "Join you?" Kavix said. "What do you mean?" Sunho smiled. "We are not trying to destroy the Council. We are simply building something new alongside it. A different kind of community. One based on freedom rather than control. One where species can grow and expand without asking permission. One where no one has to pay tribute to anyone else." He walked back to the table and poured more tea for himself and for Kavix. "The Velthari are welcome to be part of that community, if you wish. Not as allies in the traditional sense. Not as partners in a treaty, but as friends who share our values and want to build a better future together." Kavix stared at him for a long moment. "You are asking us to leave the Council." "I am asking nothing," Sunho said. "I am simply telling you what we are building and inviting you to consider whether you want to be part of it. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. The Council just made you forget that." The Velthari delegation left Station Namzen a few hours later, their scales shifting through colors that no translator could interpret. They had come hoping to bring humanity into the Council's system. Instead, they had been given a different offer entirely. In the weeks that followed, similar scenes played out across human space. The Karathi sent their most respected warriors to propose a military alliance. Sunho served them tea and explained that humanity did not want allies who would fight for them, but friends who would grow alongside them. The Mirathi sent their most cunning negotiators to propose a trade partnership. Sunho explained that humanity did not want trade partners who would seek advantage, but communities that would share prosperity. Each delegation arrived hoping to negotiate. Each delegation left having received the same message. Humanity was not interested in the old ways of doing things. They were building something new, and anyone who wanted to join them would have to leave their old assumptions behind. Some delegations, reported back to the council with anger, declaring that the humans were arrogant and dangerous and needed to be stopped. But stopped how? Human territory now stretched across a quarter of the galaxy. Human technology had advanced beyond anything the council possessed. Human population grew larger every day as colonists spread to new worlds. Other delegations reported back with something closer to wonder. They spoke of human stations where every visitor was treated with respect regardless of their species or status. They spoke of human Koei 100 years had passed since Ambassador Dohan walked out of the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had become a very different place. President Unji stood in the greeting hall of the human capital world, watching through the great windows as the delegation's shuttle descended through the clear blue sky. She was an old woman now, her hair white as snow and her face lined with the marks of a life spent in service. But her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was still quick, and when she smiled, it was with the warmth of someone who had seen many things and understood most of them. The delegation that emerged from the shuttle was unlike any that had visited humanity before. There were representatives from 12 different species, none of them wearing the elaborate robes or ceremonial armor that had once been standard for such occasions. They wore simple clothing, practical and unadorned. They walked with their heads neither bowed nor raised, but simply level, as equals approaching equals. Leading them was a being that Yunji recognized from old historical records. High Counselor Mivix of the Valkyrie Collective. He was ancient now. His scales faded to a pale gray that spoke of extreme age, even for his long-lived species. He'd been the one who demanded tribute from humanity a century ago. He'd been the one who watched Ambassador Dohan walk out of his great hall. Now he was here, on a human world, walking across human soil, about to speak with a human president. "High Counselor," Yunji said, stepping forward to greet him. "Welcome to Earth." Mivix stopped in front of her and did something that no Valkyrie had ever done before in the presence of another species. He lowered his head in a gesture of respect. "President Yunji," he said, "thank you for receiving us. We know that you have no obligation to do so. We know that after everything that happened, you would have been justified in refusing to see us at all." Onji gestured for the delegation to follow her into the hall, where comfortable seats had been arranged in a circle. No high platforms, no tiers of privilege, just equals sitting together to talk. "That was a long time ago," she said. "Much has changed since then." "Much has changed," Mivix agreed as he lowered himself into one of the seats. "More than we ever imagined. More than we ever thought possible." The other delegates settled into their places around the circle. Yunji recognized representatives from the Korathi, the Mirithi, the Hollow Federation, and several other species that had once been core members of the Galactic Council. But mixed among them were representatives from younger species as well, species that had joined the human community over the past century, species that had never known the old ways of tribute and submission. "You have come to talk," Yunji said. "What would you like to say?" Mivix looked around the circle at his fellow delegates. Some of them nodded encouragingly. Others simply waited. Then he turned back to Yunji and began to speak. 100 years ago, your Ambassador Doan stood in our great hall and refused to negotiate. At the time, we thought he was mad. We thought humanity was making a terrible mistake. We thought you would be crushed or isolated or forced to accept our terms eventually." He paused, and his scale shifted to a color that Yunji's translator identified as deep regret. "We were wrong. About everything. About you, about ourselves, about the nature of civilization itself." He gestured toward the windows, toward the sky where countless ships moved between stars that the old council had never explored. "Humanity did not need us. You built your own future, on your own terms, with your own resources. And when we tried to stop you, you simply went around us. When we tried to threaten you, you ignored us. When we tried to negotiate with you, you declined. And somehow, against everything we believed, you thrived. But more than that, he continued, you showed the galaxy something it had forgotten. You showed us that the rules we thought were eternal were actually just choices. You showed us that the system we thought was necessary was actually just one possibility among many. You showed us that every species has the right to build its own future without asking permission from anyone. Yunji nodded slowly. She had heard versions of this speech before, from other visitors, other delegations. But this was the first time it came from someone who had been there at the beginning, who had witnessed the old world's end and the new world's birth. What do you want from us? She asked gently. Mivex's scale shifted again, this time to a soft shade of hope. We have come to ask for your help, not as tribute seekers or negotiators or conquerors. We have come as students hoping to learn. He leaned forward in his seat, his ancient eyes fixed on Yunji's face. The Galactic Council is dissolving, not because of any war or disaster, but simply because no one believes in it anymore. Species that once fought to maintain their position in the hierarchy are now leaving to build their own communities. Worlds that once paid tribute are now trading freely with whoever they choose. The system we spent 10,000 years building is falling apart, and we do not know how to replace it. You want us to tell you how to build a new system, Yunji said. We want you to help us understand how you did it, Mivix replied. How did you create communities without hierarchies? How did you grow so quickly without exploitation? How did you build trust between species that had never met before? These are questions we never had to ask when the old system was working. Now we do not know the answers. Onji was silent for a long moment. She looked around the circle at the delegates who had come so far to ask these questions. She saw fear in some faces, hope in others, confusion in many. These were beings who had spent their entire lives believing in a certain way of doing things, only to watch that way crumble before their eyes. I cannot give you a system, she said finally. I cannot give you rules or structures or protocols that will solve your problems. That is exactly what went wrong the first time. Someone created a system and everyone else followed it until they forgot there were other choices. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sky. What I can tell you is what we learned over the past 100 years. We learned that civilization is not a machine to be engineered. It is a garden to be tended. You cannot control how it grows. You can only create conditions where growth is possible. She turned back to face the delegates. We never negotiated because we did not want anything you had. We did not want tribute because we did not believe in tribute. We did not want allies who would fight our battles because we wanted neighbors who would share our journey. We did not want power over others because we had seen what power over others did to those who held it. Mivix leaned forward, hanging on every word. But if you had no rules, no system, how did you maintain order? How did you prevent conflict? How did you ensure that everyone was treated fairly? Yunji smiled. We trusted each other. We believed that most beings, given the freedom to choose, would choose kindness over cruelty. We believed that communities built on respect would last longer than empires built on force. We were not always right, of course. There were conflicts. There were mistakes. But we dealt with them as they came, without trying to prevent all possible problems through endless regulations. She returned to her seat and looked at each delegate in turn. If you want to build something new, start by asking what you actually want. Not what you think you should want. Not what the old system told you to want. What do you actually want your communities to look like? What do you actually value? What kind of future do you actually want to build? The delegates looked at each other uncertainly. These were questions that many of them had never been asked before. They had always been told what to want, what to value, what to build. The idea of choosing for themselves was strange and frightening. "We are not here to conquer you," Yunji said gently. "We never wanted war. We never wanted to replace one empire with another. We simply refused to beg for what we could build ourselves. And now that we have built it, we are happy to share what we have learned with anyone who wants to learn." She stood again, and this time she extended her hand to Mavas in the human gesture of friendship. "The galaxy you knew is ending. But that does not mean everything is ending. It means something new is beginning. You can be part of that new beginning if you choose. Not as subjects or allies or partners in some treaty, but as neighbors, as friends, as beings who share this universe and want to make it a little better for everyone." Mivix looked at her hand for a long moment. In the old days, such a gesture from a younger species would have been an insult. The Velthari touched no one who was not their equal, and they considered no one their equal. But that was the old days. And this was a new galaxy. Slowly, carefully, Mivix reached out and took Yunji's hand in his own. "We would like that," he said. "We would like that very much." The other delegates rose from their seats and gathered around, some reaching out to touch hands with the humans present, others simply standing close in a gesture of solidarity. For the first time in 10,000 years, representatives from across the galaxy stood together not as hierarchies within a system, but as equals building something new. Outside the windows, ships continued to move between the stars. Colonies continued to grow on distant worlds. See,